Freeling. It's Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. 9:53 p.m. Pacific time. I'm in San Diego. And I feel like an ass right now, because whatever. Get to the point. How do I even phrase this? I've only thought about this really in my head and haven't thought about it too much in terms of being able to verbalize it. A little dot inside a piece of plastic and silicone. So there's an issue with modern day politics and the American dream. Right, Kate? So the American dream, if you go back and catalog it from its inception, it involved working hard, getting married, building a family, itching your dog's belly, right, buddy? 2.5 kids, white picket fence, being able to send your kids to college, school, having a car, right? American dream. Everybody understands the American dream. Even people that think it's absurd understand it. So what's my problem? If you look at both political spectrums in modern day times, you have the conservatives who believe that hard work and order and being able to achieve things by pulling up your bootstraps and, I don't know, going out there and producing for the world, right? Or finding something that is meritorious to the rest of society and contributing to it in some form or fashion is the right way to go about things. And if you do that and you pursue a moral, virtuous, and just lifestyle, that you'll be able to have this American dream. And they're right. Then you have the liberals. And the liberals believe that there is always an oppressed class, or there is always a class of the forgotten, and there is always a group of people that are at the bottom seemingly with no way to get up. And they're right. So why? Why are they both right? Right? That's asinine. You can't have it be right that all you have to do is work hard and you can have a wife, a life, kids, white picket fence, house, achieve the American dream, and they're simultaneously be an oppressed class there's no way to escape. So how can those both be right? Because that doesn't make any sense. But it does. It makes perfect sense if you understand a few things. One is Pareto distribution, which you can sum up easily with the Pareto principle that is commonly referred to, which is the 80-20 rule, or the 20-80 rule, depending on how you want to phrase it, which is 80% of the resources will be controlled by 20% of the people, right? And of those 20% of the people, 20% of those will control 80% of that share, and on and on and on and on. That's how you end up getting something that's similar to the 1%. See, the issue with the American dream, if you go back all the way, let's say into like the Dust Bowl era in the 1920s or something like that, is if you were a person that had worked hard and you had achieved things, you had a life and a family and you were able to send them to college and you had a car and you had a house, you relied on things. You relied on things being present to support this lifestyle. You relied on food being present and readily available. You relied on clothes being made. You relied on highways being maintained. You relied on the lights staying on, right? You relied on all these different things that people had to maintain. And the people that maintained it often were not capable of having access to that same American dream unless they became something that was no longer providing a good or a service that was essential to living the American dream. So take farmers, for example. 1920s, right? You had people in cities and metropolitan areas that were able to get everything that they wanted, or at least enough that they could say, I'm living the American dream, and they were relying on farmers to farm potatoes, to pick different crops, to take cotton, to weave cotton into clothing, right? And those people that they relied upon to have these things that they could use to actualize and live the American dream, because of what they did, and those goods needed to remain affordable to people that were living the American dream, that meant the wages they got for doing that work made the American dream inaccessible to them unless they did something that was no longer that thing. So you couldn't just be a potato farmer, really, like farming potatoes, right? That wasn't possible. You couldn't just be someone that worked for somebody else that had a company that grew potatoes. You had to become the person that ran the company that farmed the potatoes. Problem: that person now requires employees to pick all the potatoes, right? So I'm going about this weirdly, but the point I'm trying to make here is that in order for the American dream to be sustainable, it relied on a bedrock of people that provided goods and services that, due to what those goods and services compensated them for, they were not capable of living the American dream, which kind of gives you a conundrum, right? Because if everybody's going to be trying to live the American dream and everybody's going to be engaging in an entrepreneurial mindset, it's going to be trying to work, big, high-paying jobs, eventually you're going to run into people that are farming the potatoes, and that's going to be a real problem for everybody, isn't it? Right? Because all of a sudden, nobody can eat because there's no goddamn potatoes anywhere. Because everybody decided they were going to live the American dream, except you can't do it without the fucking potatoes. So the problem with the American dream wasn't that it didn't work, because it did. It did. It's 100%. It works if you follow it, but it can't work for everybody. It can't. The way that the resource management functions, you're going to have the 20% that have the 80%, which means the 80% are going to have the remaining 20. And then if you go back further down, of that 80%, right, 20, 80, 20, 80, 20, it goes recursively in both directions. Now, this isn't necessarily a massive problem in and of itself. This is something that, I should backtrack here a minute, because one thing that needs to be understood about the American dream is that it relates to capitalism, and capitalism is by far the best system that's been created to date, bar none. There's really no getting around that, right? Socialism isn't better. It's killed hundreds of millions of people. We get that. Anybody who doesn't get that, fine, you can not get that, but you're wrong. You're wrong. That's all there is to it. Capitalism is the best system to date, and it's reduced more poverty around the world at a frighteningly quick pace than any other system before it. So to say capitalism is this root of all evil thing is asinine. It's asinine. But it doesn't mean that you solve this problem, right? It just means that you're actually improving the conditions of the people that are at the bottom. So here's the issue. Well, one of them anyway. The issue with Pareto distribution in a system like this is that if you're going to have people that are going to have a set of access to particular goods that allow them to live the equivalent of what we would like to consider the American dream, you have to have enough resources to do so, meaning your GDP has to be high enough that the lowest standard of living is whatever the American dream is, right? So just think about it, right? If you think about the potato farmer, if you think about the person that's out there just picking potatoes, and not only they're out there picking potatoes, this is someone that really likes doing it day to day. They love it. They love it. They love when they go out there and they see the potato and they pick it up and they say, this is going to feed somebody. This is going to contribute to society moving forward. This is what I'm here to do, is farm potatoes like a motherfucker. That's my purpose on this planet. Are you telling me that person shouldn't have access to the American dream? You saying we don't want those people? Of course we want those people. We just don't produce enough in order to give those people the dream. And it doesn't matter, because even if you start to upgrade what the dream is, they're going to become unsatisfied with that, and they're going to think the dream needs to be higher, blah, blah, blah. So what you need to determine is what is your base starting point. So When I think about this, I think the American dream is actually a really keen insight that we had. But the thing we didn't understand, I think, is that the American dream wasn't the end point. The American dream was the starting point. See, because you can't have equality of outcome, which is a whole thing I'll get into in massive detail at some point if I keep standing in front of this thing like an idiot and talking to it. You can't have equality of outcome, right? You can't have equality of outcome because you need to have, that's getting way too into the weeds on this. You need to have equality of opportunity, right? But what equality of opportunity looks like, I think, is the American dream. You have a house with a white picket fence, and you can get married, and you can have kids, and you can send them to college, and you can have a car, and you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to starve one day or the next. That's our starting point. Problem again, we don't have enough resources to make that the starting point for everybody. We need to actually increase the amount of resources we're producing, which gets to why I'm even talking about this whole damn thing in the first place. Automation. Automation, guaranteed basic income or negative income tax, however we want to handle it. Those things are coming, right? It's not a question of if we do a UBI. It's a question of when. It is happening, 100%. Now, the problem I see with this is if we believe still at the point that we're having to utilize UBI, because we're going to, get past that. That is coming like a fucking freight train, whether you want it to or not. That's coming, right? Trying to stop UBI or saying it's not a good idea and we shouldn't do it is as asinine as trying to stop the concept of the automobile or the smartphone. Like it's coming one way or the another. Automation is going to continue to improve. Nobody's going to stop. That's going to put more people out of jobs. Nobody's going to stop. Those people that get out of jobs, eventually they're only going to have a capacity to do jobs up to a point that we're going to automate away from them. Like UBI is coming. Whether it's in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, it's coming. At some point, it's coming. So if the dream we still have at that point is that the way you provide worth and value to a society, and you know that you've made it, is you can afford a house, you can afford the fence, you can afford the wife, the kids, the college, the car, you can afford all that stuff. So if that's still in our mindset, if that's still what we think, that's what makes a good American, a good citizen of the world, we're going to have a big fucking problem on our hands. So why do I say that? Well, because those people aren't going to be able to work, right? Those people aren't going to be able to produce like that in that same sort of market economy. They're not going to be able to function like that. So what's going to happen is all the people that are producing, that are making all this stuff, the 20% that's doing 80% of the work, all those people are going to be irritated and angry at the 80% for being good for nothing layabouts that sit around and do shit all day, and the 80% that are at the bottom are going to be looking at the 20% doing all the work, looking at the things the 20% has and saying, well, fuck me, why don't I have that? We're going to start killing each other over it is the problem. Because what we think the American dream is and what we think it represents. See, the problem is the American dream doesn't represent doing work to contribute to society. That's not what the American dream is. Being an American who has made it is not about doing something that gives value to society. That's not what it's about. It's about doing something that gives enough value to society that you can afford a house with the fence and the family and the cars, so you can be seen as you did what was necessary to earn what you got. That's what the American dream is, right? It's not that you start at this point, it's that you worked hard and you earned it. Psychologically, that means obviously if you didn't do the work, you didn't earn it. And that's what our mindset is. Like, you can see it in the politics and the conversation we have about this stuff all the time, which is why the conservatives are always talking about unemployment, how these people are doing nothing, they're sucking on the government teat, and why you see liberals talking about these people are dispossessed, displaced, and there's no way for them to get out of this hole because they're both right. They're both right. But the problem is that we have the wrong concept of how this is supposed to function. We think the American dream is what's supposed to be pursued as the end goal, but it's not. The American dream is the starting point. So why I started thinking about this at all? Well, I mean, besides being alive and seeing people live and thinking about the stuff like this and people forever anyway. What really got it into me was UBI, Universal Basic Income, and automation. And the recognition that UBI in some form or fashion is coming, and thinking, what's that going to do to us? Right? What's that going to do to our minds as a society? And I started thinking about how we actually see people interacting back and forth in politics or in working class versus whatever our version of aristocracy is. And it got me thinking, it's just going to start exacerbating the problems we already have, which is the rich feel the poor are lazy, and the poor feel the rich are thieves. And just to be clear, the rich aren't thieves on purpose, right? Because they're not even really thieves. They're not stealing. The issue is that the physics don't allow them to do what they're doing and not steal. Not because of capitalism, not because of society, but because Pareto distribution. Pareto distribution, you can see it in trees, in stars, it's everywhere, right? It's a universal law. It's not something you can escape with an ideology. It doesn't matter whether you're a socialist, a capitalist, Marxist, you could be a Mayan. Like, it doesn't matter. You can't escape Pareto distribution. 20% of the people will do 80% of the work. 20% of the people will have 80% of the resources. And 80% of the people will have 20. That's going to keep happening no matter what. Right? You can't get away from that. Not only that, you don't want to get away from it. I'll get into why you don't want to get away from it at some point. But the point is, you can't get away from that. Right? Like, it's in fire ant mounts, for crying out loud. 20 to 30% of the ants do 80 to 70% of the tunneling. Right? You can't get away from this rule. And it's foolish to think that we can come up with a social construct that is going to allow us to get away from it, because we're not going to be able to. We're not. Right? Star mass can't get away from this problem. We are not going to get away from it. It's not going anywhere. So the issue is, you need to not solve the problem. Right? Because it's not a problem. It's a natural law. One of my favorite quotes is Francis Bacon, who said, "Nature to be commanded must be obeyed." Thinking about how to solve Pareto distribution is not obeying nature. Pareto distribution is nature. So you have to obey it, then figure out how to command it. So trying to get away from Pareto distribution anyway is folly. Like, we can't. That's like trying to get away from gravity. We can figure out how to manipulate and work inside of gravity, but only because we understand and accept gravity, right? We obey so we can command. You can't get away from Pareto distribution. You can't get away from there being an elite 20% that has 80% of the resources. You can't get away from that. And even if you could, you don't want to, because the 20% are the people that are working all the time. They're the people that are coming up with innovations, that are making the big companies, that are doing all these things that are causing our world to become better and reduce poverty. But at the same time, you don't want the 80% living in bad circumstance. You don't want the 80% having to combat Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because them providing you food is not valuable enough for you to be able to allow them to have children that they can send to college. Right? That's where we have the problem here. That's why conservatives and liberals are bickering about the same thing, and they're both right. They just don't know they're talking about the same goddamn problem. So you can't get away from Pareto distribution. Which made me go back to my UBI thing. And thinking about that and what it was going to do to us, right? Because people are going to try like hell to fight universal basic income, right? They're going to do everything they can. They're going to say, it's horrible, it's awful, we should never, ever, ever do it, but it's coming, brother. Make no mistake, it's coming. It doesn't matter how hard they fight it, it's coming. Because at some point, things are going to be so automated, and you're going to have 20 to 30% of the people on the planet starving because they can't find work to do. And what do you think is going to happen when you don't want to give them a UBI? You know what's going to fucking happen then? Yeah, you do. Right? So you're not going to want that. So you're going to try to give them just enough so they don't starve. Just enough so they're placated. Just enough so that you don't have to deal with killing a third of the population. But that got me thinking. Since you can't get away from Pareto distribution, UBI is going to come at some point because automation's going along like a truck and nothing's going to stop it, right? What's the problem? right? Because people think the problem is the distribution of resources, but the distribution of the resources isn't the problem, actually. The problem is the American dream is viewed as the end point, not the start point. The American dream is the start point, but why? Why is it the start point? Well, to understand that, you have to understand what our purpose is as a society, what we're here to do as individuals and as a group. What is it we're trying to achieve? And the thing we figured out somewhat brilliantly is that people are self-motivated. You know, people want their lives to be better. People want to have a mission. People want to have a purpose. People want to exist for a reason, right? People want to achieve something. People want to be great at something. People want to look at the world and say, I helped build this, right? We figured this out, but part of what keeps people keyed on doing this is what they get as a return for it, right? It's the reward. You know, think about why you go to work. Do you go to work because you love what you do? I mean, yeah, sure. Sure, you do. A little bit, maybe, if you're lucky. But that's not why you go to work, right? That's not why anybody goes to work, really. Except for a rarefied few, maybe that 20% that has 80% of the resources. But the 80%, that's not why they go to work. Those 80% go to work so they can fucking eat. And, you know, we kind of have to do that to a point. Anyway, sorry, I'm trailing off there. The thing we figured out is that people are going to want to look out for themselves above anybody else, right? That's just accurate. And if you ever think that's not accurate, go without food or water for 3 days and tell me what you think about it then, right? Because it's not a joke. People think about themselves above all else and their families. So what we figured out is, you know, if we want people to do the best that they possibly can, and we want people to contribute to society, we need to enable people to try to better their own lives through their own work. That was sort of the brilliant thing we figured out, maybe almost on accident. I don't even know whether or not they thought that. But really, I mean, what they thought is if you do the work, you should be able to get the benefit of the work, which is true, right? Because if you go to work and you're working 40-hour shifts, do you want to be able to not feed your kid after you're done because there's other stuff that has to be done? There's a tariff on some tea that has to be paid. Is that what you want? No, that's not what you want, right? You want to be able to feed your kid. People are selfishly motivated. So we sort of brilliantly figured out, hey, let's just enable the individuals. And if individuals get to pursue what they want, then you're going to get to start thinking about a free market economy, right? Because you can't just, as long as you protect people from having something stolen from them, they're going to have to engage in equitable trade among one another, right? So the only way that you're going to be able to rise to the top and pursue any sort of these dreams is by providing goods and services that other people want. This is a really smart idea, right? Because if you don't provide the good and service that people want, it doesn't matter how much you try to socially engineer them. It doesn't matter how much you try to tell them, oh, they need the thing you're getting. Sooner or later, they're going to figure it out, and then you're going to be fucked, right? So that's part of where the American dream came from, right? Because the ideal is for you to be able to make it so you can have a family and your family is going to be okay and taken care of and safe. That's where the whole thing came from. Individual life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all that. And it's a good plan. It's a really good plan. It's the best plan we've ever had, as is evident by what it's done for the world. But just because it's a good plan doesn't mean it's perfect, and it doesn't mean it can't be better, right? Because every plan can be better. So, if the American dream is you working to get all this stuff, well, but now you can't work because everything's been automated or shipped to China. Now you got a problem, right? And now those people are good for nothing layabouts because they're not living the dream, because they're not doing the work. And you can see this in the dialogue between people, right? You can see it on the liberal side when they're talking about these people and they're saying, the issue isn't that these people aren't willing to work, because they are. And they're right. They are. And the conservatives are saying
No, the issue is those people aren't good enough to reach the American dream. And kind of they're right. But it's not a question of good enough, right? It's a question of the distribution of resources. It's always going to be 80-20, no matter what you do. So I started thinking, okay, if automation's coming, and it's only going to get bigger, and UBI's coming, and it's going to potentially tear our country apart, what's the answer? So that got me thinking about it. Okay, well, what's the actual problem then? Right? Because if everybody keeps talking about Pareto distribution, one group like it's the solution, one group like it's the problem, when actually they're both wrong, and it's not the solution or the problem, it's a thing that just is. What is the actual problem? That's what got me started thinking about the American dream. The problem is we didn't understand what the goal was. We didn't understand what the purpose was. We didn't understand what we were here doing. See, the ideal was you work hard, you get money, you get stuff, you get a family, you do all this stuff, and that's why you're here. But is it though? Is it why you're here? It's definitely a good motivator. It's definitely how people work, and it's definitely how we've achieved a lot of things. But is it the why? I don't think it is. I don't think achieving that is why we are here. But now you start getting into some sort of like deep philosophical questions, right? Why are we here? What are we here to do? And I always found that question fascinating, even when I was growing up. Because people were like, why are we alive? What are we here to do? And it's like, well, that's an easy question. Why are you struggling with that? It's like, what do you mean it's an easy question? Well, I mean, look at a hammer. What's it here to do? Well, it's here to hit nails and remove nails from boards. You can tell just by looking at it. Right? You can look at its design and tell what a hammer's for. So why are we here? Well, that's easy. Just look at our design. Right? We're here to survive. We're here to reproduce. But unlike most other animals, we actually have a cognitive capacity. Now, why do we have that? That's an odd evolutionary trend, I think. Until you start understanding what the human mind is, at least in my estimation. In my estimation, the human mind is just a super advanced evolution engine. See, if you think about evolution, all evolution is a mistake, right? What was it? I noticed Westworld actually sort of pointed this out, and I actually really like that about the show, because this is something I've sort of known for years, and lots of people have known for years before me. It's not like making me impressive or anything, but I'm trailing off and trying to deal with my neuroticism and imposter syndrome. So, evolution. It proceeds by making mistakes, right? It mutates and it mutates and it makes mistakes until eventually it finds the right thing to do. And then when it finds the right thing to do, those things are stronger and they breed and so on and so on and so forth. So, but if you think about the process of evolution can take, thousands of years for the breeding and the potential genocide of different genome combinations, and until you get the biggest and the strongest and the best, right? It takes so long for evolution to actually achieve its end. And it keeps trying to think of better ways to achieve the end of evolution. That's what this is. You understand? Think about what this is, and think about how you live your life. All you do is go around trying to make decisions. And how many of them do you fuck up? You fuck up all the time, right? That's pretty much all life is, right? Life is just mental evolution. It's evolution at such a rapid pace that biological evolution cannot keep track of it. I mean, think of how long it takes for a monkey to grow a prehensile tail. How long do you think that takes in evolutionary terms? How long do you think it takes a human being, to go from being a conservative to a liberal? That can happen back and forth 38 times in a lifetime. Monkeys growing tails, you're talking 10,000 years there. Right? Our whole brain is geared to be an evolution machine. And it evolves at such a rapid pace that biology can't keep pace with it. Which is why we're getting things that a lot of the time we don't even know how to, or understand how to use, like social media, right? And we don't understand the effects that it's going to have on us and our brains by interacting with it. So, why are we here, right? That's sort of the question. Why are we here? We're here to survive, to reproduce, and to be hyper-advanced evolution machines. But that's sort of like the mechanics of why we're here. It's not the why. It's not how we, as us, as the beings we are, live. Because part of consciousness, part of the thing we have to deal with, is we have to actually find meaning. We have to find purpose. Almost as though that's part of our design, right? Almost as though that's something we've evolved. The need to find purpose, because this gives us a way to actually actively engage in improving the world around us and improving ourselves. So, I'm probably going into some more detail at some point, again, if I keep doing this nonsense, but our purpose, I think, is to be heroes to our species. That's our purpose. That's what each of our purpose is, which is why the American dream has such appeal, right? Because it taps into that a little bit. You know, if you're the person that has the house and the white picket fence and all the stuff that goes along with it, right? You're kind of like a hero in a little way, right? And there's kind of an allure about that. But, again, Pareto distribution, not everybody can be the hero. You can't necessarily be the hero on the global scale all the time. That's going to be reserved for a finite amount of people. That's going to be a small percentage at the top. 80-20, 80-20, 80-20, 80-20, and on and on and on. But you have heroism that you can achieve up to a point within your own local space, right? You have the heroism that you can achieve of sort of your own mental health and your own family and your own dealings with community around you, and you can slowly progress up this ladder to be more heroic on a more and more and more global scale as you keep going, right? But there's only going to be a set reserved amount at the top that can be the heroes. That's why it's more like a pyramid. You have heroes down at this level that compromise this much of it, and then this much, and then this much, and then this much, and that's the 80%, right? Then you have those at the top, and that's 20%, and then at that 20%, you have another 20. So our purpose, I think, here is to be heroes in our local space, attempt to achieve heroism on a more and more global scale that we can get. And once we get to the point that's the best that we can achieve, or the place that we feel is the best that we should be doing, we want to be the best goddamn potato farmer that ever farmed a potato. Utilizing that to form the bedrock of what allows the rest of the heroes that are functioning on the global scale to function. Right? See, the difference is that the people that achieve the American dream aren't the heroes. It's that everybody that contributes to the American dream, whether or not it's the person that reached that particular milestone or the person that provides the services for the person at that milestone, they're all heroes in the same pursuit, which is the advancement of the human society, the advancement of humanity. Right? Because you can't be Elon Musk without somebody growing food for you. Right? You just can't. If you run out of all the farmers, eventually you have to farm. Now, we can all think whatever we want about Mr. Musk as we will, but the point is that everybody that's a hero in some capacity, everybody that's at the apex of our current capitalist society, we look at as some sort of role model in terms of how they've achieved the American dream through the amount of capital they've possessed, whether that's Warren Buffett or Mark Cuban or Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Bill Gates or pick your person, right? All of those people need the people that can't afford the dream. But the dream isn't the point. The dream was incorrect. Not incorrect, it was incomplete. It was looking at the wrong end of the spectrum. It's thinking that's where you're supposed to get to. But no, that's where you're supposed to start, right? Because in order for you to be Jeff Bezos, in order for you to be Elon Musk, you need the people that are going to be doing that stuff that is going to be assisting you in that capacity. But we don't view those people like that, right? Think about welders, right? Or plumbers, or auto mechanics. Every time you talk about some profession that seems to be a blue-collar, low-level thing, what's the first thing anybody ever says about it? It's a noble profession. Why do you feel the need to say that all the time? Nobody says it's a noble profession for somebody that is a car salesman. Nobody says It's a noble profession if you work in investment banking. Nobody says it's a noble profession if you're a lawyer. Nobody bothers to do that, right? It's like the whole thing that lots of black people have noticed, I'm sure, in regard to always saying, oh, they speak so well. I think Chris Rock actually made some jokes about that at one point in time, right? You say it's a noble profession because you feel like you have to justify that it's good and it's proper, because the innate response is to think, oh, that doesn't actually have enough value. And you think that because it doesn't actually give you the resources to live the American dream, by and large. And it's a bad example. I don't want to debate the specifics about whether or not you can be an entrepreneur plumber, because not everybody can be an entrepreneur plumber. Eventually their company's going to get so big they're going to need employees and yada, 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 yada. Right? The point is that there are always going to be people at the bottom. But that's not bad. Right? If there's someone, just pick a person at random. Now let's say that person waits tables at a Denny's, right, for the hell of it, right? Let's say that person loves waiting tables at that Denny's, right? Like, personal example. When I was younger, about 16, I was a car hop at Sonic Drive-Ins in Texas. Car hop, if you aren't familiar with it, I'm talking as though anybody's going to watch this, but just in case. If you aren't familiar with what a car hop is, basically they're the person that when you go to a Sonic Drive-In, which is a fast food hamburger joint, they're the person that actually brings out your food and your drinks and whatnot, because you would just park there in your car and you did a little speaker, give the order, lots of people were parked there, and then someone would actually bring the food out, and that was a car hop, and that's what I did. So when I was working as a car hop, I did my utmost every day to do the best job I possibly could. And the reason I did that was because everybody that came to Sonic, right, these are all people that are all living their own lives. They're all going through their own troubles, and I don't know any of their circumstances, right? Somebody could have just gotten a raise at work. Somebody could have just had a friend die. I have no idea. But I know the people that are coming there, they're just coming there to get their food and feel like everything's okay and they don't have to worry about shit for a minute, right? And I sort of like understood that intrinsically. And I took that really to heart. So I wanted to be sure that when somebody showed up to my Sonic and I was going to be delivering their food, they knew everything was going to be handled. They didn't have to worry about a damn thing. I got it. I'm going to smile, but not too much, because I don't want to feel like you have to be off-put and you have to smile enough back at me, right? I just want to give you enough of a look that you feel like you're at ease and say, you know, hey, here's your food. No thanks, have a good day, right? Like, I took pride in that. I took pride in thinking these people get to come here, and for 5 or 10 minutes they don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to be able to eat because somebody's got it. And it's clearly somebody that looks like they give a shit about what they do. They care about being cordial. They care about being polite, right? So I liked doing it. I actually really enjoyed that job. Now think about a person that does a job like that, and they really enjoy it. Now see, American Dream, you can't keep doing that. Not if you want to live the dream. You can't do that job. But aren't those people valuable? I think they are. I think if somebody wants to be the best goddamn waiter they can be, that's valuable to society. Right? Because if you have, like, your Jeff Bezos that goes to a Denny's, and he sits down to eat for whatever reason. I'm not assuming he eats at Denny's. Whatever, it's not the point. Point is, if he goes there, he wants to just eat a meal, that's the guy that's going to go run Amazon to have stuff delivered all around the nation for anybody that wants it, right? That's the thing he built. And if you get to be the person that's taking care of that guy for 20 minutes so he can go out and keep doing that stuff, isn't that valuable? I think it is. And I think it's valuable enough that anybody that does those jobs, we should start them at a position where they don't have to worry about whether or not they can achieve the American dream, because the American dream is the starting point, right? If you're doing something where you're contributing to society and you're doing it well and it's your passion, it's the thing you want to do, why shouldn't you have a house? Why shouldn't you have the fence? Why shouldn't you have the car, right? Why shouldn't you have the family? Why shouldn't you be able to send your kids to college? And that's where the resource issue comes into play, right? Because yeah, that's a good plan. Yeah, it sounds nice, right? If you think about people starting there and don't think about resources or limitations of resources an issue, tell me what's wrong with that. Someone that really wants to do that job well. They're saying, oh, well, the person that really wants to be great at waiting tables, maybe they could start a business where they're training, yeah. And then you get into the same problem where, yeah, they started a business doing that, and now they have employees that are doing the job they were doing. Like, people need to stop with this thinking that you be an entrepreneur and you start a new business because now you're the one living the dream, because in order for you to live that, it requires employees that are doing the job you were doing, and that job they're doing doesn't allow them to live the dream you are now pursuing. So that juvenile mentality that you just need to evolve into this higher like version of yourself that can afford to do all this stuff is asinine. But the reason they do that is because they're actually talking about a very real problem, which is limitation of resources, right? We can't afford to have everybody living that lifestyle, as much as we might think it's right. You know, if you took and this is going to be really horrible math, so don't follow this too heavily, but if you took the GDP of the U.S. circa, say, 2016, along with the population of working adults at the time, which is anywhere from age 16 to 50-something, we'll say, and you took all the GDP that the U.S. produced, converted it into dollars, and gave those dollars back to the individuals that worked, each individual of working age would have $90,000 a year. That sounds good, right? No, because you got the military, and you need the military. I'm not even debating whether or not you need the military. You need the military. You need the military, you need the police, you need fire departments, you need roads, you need the health care, and there's going to be people that can't necessarily afford the health care, and people that are going to need more of it, because what if somebody, for whatever reason, even though they have 90,000, they have 4 kids, when another person has no kids, right? It's not going to work, right? It doesn't work like that. You can't just have everybody work, take all the GDP, convert it into money, and then give it back to people, and even if you did, 90,000 per person would not be sufficient for what needs to be done, because you need to centralize a lot of that stuff to make it more efficient, which is the whole role government's supposed to fulfill, right? So the problem is we can't have everybody living an American dream because we don't produce enough resources. Automation. Automation is going to start taking care of that for us to some capacity, right? Because it's only going to get better, right? Don't think it's not going to get better at some astronomical rate, because it is. And eventually we're going to be producing so many resources, especially if we start being able to actually travel between planets, do all these, like, at some point we are going to reach a mass of resources where we have enough resources to have everybody live like this. But again, the problem, if we think that those people at the bottom don't deserve it, and the people at the bottom think the people at the top are robbing everybody to get it, well, we're just going to end up killing each other when we get to that point, right? Because the problem's already pretty bad in regard to how people relate to one another. And it's not necessarily that they're not civil or angry. I mean, that's not the issue. People have been not civil and angry forever. The issue is the more this goes on, the more each of the groups are going to start to get more disgusted with the other group. And once they start getting disgusted, that's a problem, right? Anger, that's fine. You can deal with anger. Disgust, that's about a lamb tail shake before people start killing each other. So if we don't have a plan for what we're going to do, when we have all these people that can't work and we start having more resources, we're going to start killing each other over it. But I don't think we need to do that. I think we just need to see the road that's coming in front of us and figure out what to do about it. And we need to take a moment to realize that the American dream and capitalism and everything that America produced is great, and it has been phenomenally good for the world. But it's going to start reaching a point fairly soon, I think, that it's not going to sustain itself past us trying to murder each other over it, potentially. And I'm sure people would think I'm being alarmist or asinine or silly about that, but no, I'm not. So that's why I started really thinking about this and trying to figure it out. And it's just a cool problem to try to solve, right? So, why we're here then? It's not to live the American dream. The reason we're here is to be heroes. Why are we here to be heroes? Well, I mean, think of every story that's ever been told by anybody ever, right? The point of the story is always the person that's the hero, and the hero is always the person that goes out and does the things and comes back and does for the village, right? Like, the hero is the Elon Musk. I mean, why do you think Elon Musk is popular, right? Last I checked, he's more popular than Jeff Bezos, who arguably does way more for the nation than Elon Musk does. But why is he popular? He's popular because he's actually trying to advance the human species, and he actually gives a shit, right? He's not just going after the rank order best way to make money. That's why people love him, because he has a heroic demeanor to him. He has a heroic set of goals and ideals. And people gravitate toward that because we're supposed to, I think. I think that's part of our design. I think we're supposed to gravitate toward heroes because when we see somebody that's trying to do something great, we want to try to help those people because those people are the ones that are supposed to be going out to doing the things to come back to help us, right? So I think that's our point. I think that's why we're here. I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's not going out there and making money. That's not the point, right? Like it's been a better point than any before it. Again, don't misunderstand me on that. It has done a lot of good for the world. But I think it's an incomplete understanding and potentially an incorrect understanding. It's just closer to a correct understanding. Because you're supposed to try to be a hero. And failing that, you're supposed to support the people who have succeeded in becoming heroic. I think that's the point. All right, I feel like I've rambled